about unpredictability, the scenes that at least India woke up to this morning of Trump supporters storming US Congress were just shocking. US Congress was laid to siege by Trump supporters who wanted to disrupt the last leg of a vote counting process, which usually is just part of the process. It doesn't raise any eyebrows at all. It's not a big deal. It's almost a formality where all the lawmakers get together and ratify the vote. And in this case, they eventually did ratify that Joe Biden indeed had won the election and will be the next US president. But after a call from Donald Trump, a lot of his supporters reached this place and stormed US Capitol. In fact, there were fights and protests and fires, gunfire shot. One person has died on the spot, another 3 in hospital, and 6 hours later the lawmakers came back to complete the process. Chandra Srikanth takes you through some of what has happened last night.
These are the headlines that America woke up to today. A day that will go down as one of the darkest hours for the world's oldest democracy. The world watched with a mixture of abject shock and morbid fascination as pro-Trump protesters stormed the US Capitol building where the Congress meets. This after Trump egged them on to support Republican lawmakers who plan to challenge the Electoral College votes in some states. Here's how it unfolded. At around 12:10 a.m. IST on Thursday, the US Congress convened a joint session on electoral votes. Trump addressed a rally in DC shortly after. The Capitol went into lockdown as thousands protested, scaled walls, and breached the Capitol Hill. What followed was hours of chaos, scuffles, before lawmakers were evacuated and the Capitol was secured. The DC mayor has extended a public emergency to 15 days after 4 people died amidst the violence. World leaders and some of America's biggest business leaders expressed shock, from Prime Minister Modi to UK PM Boris Johnson, to Trudeau to Macron to the EU, to even authoritarian regimes like China and Turkey. A rare day when America was on the receiving end. While Apple CEO Tim Cook called the insurrection a sad and shameful chapter in America's history, IBM CEO Arvind Krishna condemned the unprecedented lawlessness. Anand Mahindra said the collateral damage is to the perception of American security being the best in class. President Trump, meanwhile, who was locked out of all his social media accounts for his inflammatory posts, finally released a statement that he would ensure an orderly transition on the 20th of January when Joe Biden will become POTUS. The US Congress too has affirmed Biden as the next president of the United States. As Biden works to heal the wounds of a divided nation, what happened in the US is a cautionary tale for democracies around the world. It was also a painful reminder that democracy is fragile and underscored the need for strong and independent institutions to safeguard it. Chandra Srikanth, ET Now, Bengaluru.
Michael Kugelman and Chidanand Rajgata join me on the discussion this evening. Thank you so much for speaking with us, both of you in the United States and probably grappling with what's going on right now. Michael, let me begin with you. Is this truly over? Trump has said that he will hand over power peacefully. Biden has officially been declared as the next US president. But look at those pictures there in the crowds. That anger is still there, which can be tapped into again and again. Is that a worry right now in your country?
Yes, certainly. I think this is going to be 13 long days, or however long it is until January 20th. I think there is concern that the outgoing president might have something up his sleeve, particularly in terms of what he may try to do on January 20th itself. I think the hope and the expectation is that he likely won't be at the inauguration, but that he'll just simply go to Florida and won't try to have anyone cause any disturbances. But indeed, given the fact that he did not at all discourage these radical supporters of his from doing what they did yesterday, that suggests a willingness on his part to tacitly support any effort to obstruct the democratic process and to try to prevent there from being a peaceful transition of power. Yeah, let's be clear. These agitators that stormed the Capitol, they are emboldened. They're empowered because they basically got away with what they wanted to do. Yes, there have been several dozen arrests, I believe, and there probably will be some more. But they got away with it. They were able to breach the security and do what they wanted to do. And I think that could prompt them to do more. Not necessarily before January 20th, maybe after January 20th. I mean, the toxic divides and partisanship in this country will remain when the next administration takes office. And with the Democrats now controlling both the House and the Senate, I think that will trigger these fringe supporters of Donald Trump even more. So yeah, to answer your question, we may not be seeing the last of this. With any luck, it'll be quiet before January 20th, up to January 20th, but unfortunately, we cannot rule anything out.
Chidanand Rajghatta, is there a chance that will be taken? There's a lot of chatter now about somehow getting Donald Trump to exit even before January 20th and not waiting up till there. How would that work out, and is that in the realm of possibility at all?
It definitely is in the realm of possibility. There is talk that, they should invoke the 25th Amendment, which basically allows for removal of a president who's incapacitated or unable to discharge his duty. That has to be done by the Trump cabinet. But there are some gray areas there because I think half the Trump cabinet is really constituted of people who are not been confirmed and who are actually in an acting capacity. They're acting secretaries, like acting defense secretary. So there's some gray area there. It also requires Mike Pence to move against Trump. It could work out well because Pence can then, pardon Trump for his federal crimes and become the 46th president, making Biden the 47th. But it's all in the realm of speculation. I don't think it'll go through, but everyone will be holding their breaths for the next 2 weeks. There's already concern that an unhinged president who has nuclear codes, shouldn't be in office at this time. If you can't trust him with Twitter and tweeting, how can you trust him with nuclear codes? So yeah, a lot of talk. There's also talk of impeachment, but there's not enough time for that. But basically, to your previous question about whether this is going to go away, this is now a long-term problem. It's like saying, will the Naxalite problem in India go away? It's not going to go away. This is there has been extremist movement and militias in the United States for a long time. There's always been a lid on it, and Mr. Trump has essentially sort of, removed the lid. He's just opened a can of worms. He's allowed them to run free. He incited this mob, literally. It's on tape. And this is not the first time. Nobody should be surprised. This is a president who has constantly actually glorified violence at his rallies, bash him up, I'll pay the legal fees. I mean, all this is on tape. So I really don't see why anyone should be surprised that there was violence. This president has been, an agent provocateur for many months, for 4 years, I'd say, even before. And he let loose the dogs of war on lawmakers and his own party, actually. He and his sons have implicitly threatened Mike Pence and his future if he does not, toe the line and help him steal a second term. So this was always coming. What was surprising, though, was the absolutely sort of timid response by the Capitol Police, by the law enforcement, and by people tasked with guarding this portal of democracy. They were caught napping. It was shocking how easily these mobs overran the Capitol. And if you contrast it with, the kind of response they had for the Black Lives Matter, protests, I mean, it's just stunning. I mean, there, the army was called in, the military was called out, they massed, armored personnel carriers, to beat back, protesters. So I saw a degree of actually complicity among many law enforcement. There were, cops and uniformed personnel taking selfies with these, thugs. And that was just stunning. And these guys, waltzed into the Capitol carrying symbols of, hatred, the Confederate flag. Somebody put a noose outside the Capitol. And the scenes were extraordinary. It is just amazing. And I can imagine, totalitarian leaders and authoritarian figures across the world having a quiet chuckle. I saw a meme where Xi Jinping and Putin and the North Korean guy are exchanging, phone calls and, chatter about what a delightful sight this is. So yeah, for now, hello from the Banana Republic of the United States.
Michael, what does this mean for the Biden presidency? I mean, he's got all his ducks in a row on paper. He's won the Senate as well. Effectively, things should be smoother in terms of implementing his agenda. But on ground, with such a big rift in society, what is he really going to do? And does this really make it much harder for him?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. On one hand, you could argue that having a Democratic-controlled Congress, both chambers being in Democratic control, could help him because it'll be easier for him to get legislative initiatives through. But I think that's also going to make things harder. That's going to exacerbate the deep, toxic partisan divides in Washington and beyond. It's going, as I said before, it's going to trigger the Trump folks and his most hardline supporters. They don't like the fact that the Congress is Democratic controlled. That could be something that raises the likelihood of more acts of sabotage, acts of violence, whatever you want to call it. Now, I mean, to his credit, Biden is someone that has always been, I mean, he's pitched himself as a conciliator. He's projected as a conciliator. I think that he does have that ability. I mean, when he was on Capitol Hill, he was the guy that would oftentimes reach across the aisle, across the political aisle, to work with Republicans. He has very good relationships with many Republican members of Congress. So I guess if he's the type of person that you would want in order to try to initiate this healing process that he had talked about so often during his campaign. But yeah, it's just going to be so incredibly difficult. I imagine that Donald Trump, after he is an ex-president, he will continue from the sidelines to try to act as an agitator, so to speak. If he retains his Twitter account, which of course is in doubt now, given what happened yesterday, he'll use Twitter as his bully pulpit to rally the masses, so to speak. If he does indeed want to continue to entertain thoughts of running for president in 2024, that suggests that he'll be out there holding rallies, things like that. And this, unfortunately, this will be very difficult for the Biden administration to address because obviously Trump has the right to do those types of things. But that will make it all the more difficult for Biden to initiate this healing process that's so important. And against the backdrop of this incredibly serious pandemic. I mean, we forget about that I think yesterday or perhaps Tuesday was the deadliest day for the pandemic in the US so far. That's not going away. And of course, there's the economic struggles that this country is facing that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. So really, bottom line is that Biden, I would argue, confronts three separate generational challenges in the United States. He confronts this public health challenge of the pandemic, the economic crisis, and then, of course, this social crisis, which is tied into the deep toxic divides and the hyper-partisanship, these violent expressions of political agitation. That's going to be a really tough job for Biden. So I hope I give him my best hopes. I hope he's able to pull it off, but it's going to be very difficult. And I think we're going to be seeing some pretty difficult times in the United States for the foreseeable future.
Well, I think the biggest question now facing the United States is what to do about the Trump problem and make sure that these kind of violent incitements don't take place in the future as well. Thank you so much for speaking with us today, Chidanand and Michael, and joining us on the story which the world truly is watching.